What is going on? 8-3. It feels good. Sean McDermott now 4-0 coming out the bye week. We're here to talk about this very interesting game by the Buffalo Bills today. And I got my co-hosts with me, Fred Kilmartin. What's going on?
Not much. Enjoying this 8-3. First time since 1993. So what I got to do.
Yep, much like tradition. We got to switch it to the Buckethead. Every time the Bills win, you guys know the tradition. Buckethead Fred. Clayton Garrett, what's going on? It wasn't exactly the Nate Robinson type of knockout for the Bills today, but it was a win nonetheless. So, we got to talk about it.
Yeah, it was an exciting game. Both these teams made their mistakes. Both these teams made their plays. It was definitely an exciting game, but a game that the Bills needed to pull out and win, and they inevitably did. And regardless of the fashion that they did, which we'll talk about that. We'll get into it here in a minute, but a win's a win for the Bills at this point in the season, and starting the second stretch of the season off on a good note, that's important.
Right. I think people are getting a little too critical, and like you said, a win's a win, but at no point in this game today did I personally feel like the Bills did not have control of this game. You know how you just go through the motions of a football game and you just feel like the momentum is swinging. And not at one point did I feel like the Bills were not in control of this game. Fred, what did you see? Did you think they were in control of this game all the way throughout?
Yeah, I was watching the offense and I thought they were moving the ball well. I like the fact that we got a running game involved early on, and I really thought the defense was playing well. You got to look at this Herbert kid. He has a big gun. He can throw the ball, and they can make plays all over the place. They got a lot of weapons, but I really thought the Bills had control of this game right from the beginning, to be honest with you.
I thought the same thing. Clay, what do you think, man?
The one thing that I really liked in this game is that they established that ground attack. I've been saying week after week that this Bills rushing attack needs to get some sort of synergy amongst themselves, some sort of chemistry, some sort of rhythm. And, one thing that a lot of people were critical of in this game was the fact that the Bills rushing attack wasn't really all that consistent, but these two running backs were averaging 7 yards per carry. And one thing that's important to remember about both Zach Moss and Devin Singletary is that they're both rhythm running backs. They're not guys that are going to take the ball, and they're not elite runners. They're not elite talents with the ball in their hand by any means. Now, they both have I wouldn't say versatile skill sets, but they both have usable skill sets that were utilized very well today. And, as I said, you saw both of these guys Devin Singletary averaged 7.5 yards per carry and Zach Moss at 6.6. So both of these guys had a heck of a day, as this team had over 170 rushing yards. And, that's really what took this Bills offense to the victory that they had. Josh Allen, he wasn't asked to do much today, but he didn't look – it definitely wasn't his best day. But he did what he needed to do when asked upon. You'd like to see those turnovers cleaned up. But overall, this Bills offense, they did what they wanted with that Chargers defense today, I thought.
No, I think you're definitely right on that one. They definitely did what they were supposed to do today, and it was really nice to see them run the ball. We know that going into the bye week and coming out of the bye week, that the running game was going to be a point of emphasis because Sean McDermott flat out said it outright. Like, this is a point of emphasis, getting that running game going. And I think we touched on this last show. We definitely need to get the running game going because as this weather starts coming into play, and let's be honest, we're kind of headed towards a home playoff game, and we may not be able to throw the ball 40, 45 times in January or December in Buffalo. It's just not always, the stars may not align for that. So it was good to see that. Hey, we got a salute from Mexico tonight. Hey, Mexico, what's going on? Andreas Real, what's going on? How are you? Good to have you join us today. But no, like I said, I obviously we were arguing with people during the game about how the Bills should win this game, and I'm starting to get a little bit irritated with everybody thinking that you're supposed to beat teams by 30 points or by 20 points or by 15 points. Vegas don't even get those type of spreads out for a reason, because these are professional football players. These are professional teams. Hell, this Charger team came into this game, 3-7 today? Did they come in? Yeah. And they lost almost three games in a row that they had leads in. In 2 of the games, they had double-digit leads, okay? This was a very solid offensive football team coming into this game, and we pretty much controlled them and kept them in check, even with the returning Austin Ekeler today. I think people are getting to be a little bit too nitpicky, if I want to call it that. Clayton, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what people want to see from this football team that they haven't already. There are a few things that I'd like to see from the Buffalo Bills before I'm really sure of what football team this is that they have going in the playoffs. But none of those critiques I really ever see. It's always some hairstring excuse as to why the Bills aren't performing or what have you. And this is a team that is mentally tough, that has faced adversity, that has played well against good competition or bad competition or whatever it may be. This is a team that's 8-3 at this point of the season for a reason. This is a team that's 8-3 in consecutive years at this point for a reason. This is a very good football coach or a good coached football team. These players, they've faced plenty of adversity. If it's one thing that I have a concern for is their experience in the playoffs as a whole. And, that's not an issue. That's not a bridge that we've had to cross yet, and we'll talk about it later down the line. But this is a very solid football team, from the locker room, from the culture that they have, from the coaching staff. This is a very well organized football team. This is a solid organization at this point. This isn't a Bills team of the past where I understand it may get frustrating with the stupid penalties that occur throughout the duration of a football game. But it's really kind of an NFL problem at this point. I mean, you look at some of the fouls that were called on the Bills today. I think a lot of us could agree that some of them were a little nitpicky and a little ticky-tacky, and some were BS completely and entirely. But this is overall a very solid football team. I don't know what people are really looking for from this team. I think really the moment where people stop having these conversations, where we no longer have to acknowledge anything of these sorts, is after the Bills beat the Steelers in a couple weeks, I think.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that'd be a game that Buffalo fans be happy with. If I still have echo, let me know. Clayton, do you hear anything on my end?
It's just a little cloudy. I don't hear an echo anymore, though.
Okay, cool. We got that all set up. It was probably some dirty Charger fans messing with my microphone. But, no, I'm just joking. I like Charger fans. It's pretty cool. No, I agree. Fred, do you want to touch on that? I mean, what are fans are expecting?
Well, I mean, you got to look at the fans right now. The Bills are coming off a bye, but you're also playing a Chargers team that has really been hanging with all these teams every week. They've led some teams going into the fourth quarter. They actually just broke, losing 3 games in a row, and they got a lot of weapons. You got to look at Keenan Allen alone. I mean, he's a second receiver right behind Diggs in there, and then you got Eckler that's coming back there. I mean, and it's Justin Herbert. I can't say enough about this kid. He's 6'6", 237 pounds, and He was off today, but there's an offense there, and they're led by Anthony Lynn, and we know that he likes to run the ball. He's got some weapons down there. This is a team that you're going to watch, next year or even the year after. They're going to be contenders, but this team is not going to just roll over. Even though the Bills came off from a bye and they were prepared, they had next week, this is still a team that's going to come out and they're going to gun and they're going to throw everything at you. And you know what? It's a respect to Anthony Lynn. I mean, I was one of the ones that actually wanted to see Anthony Lynn be the head coach for the Bills after they fired Rex Ryan, but it didn't become. We ended up hiring Sean McDermott. But you got to give the hats off, and you got to give respect to Anthony Lynn. He has got a good program down there, and he's building. And this is something, this Charger team's not going to go away. There's no way, not with the horses that they got on defense alone. This is a good team. It's a good football team, but they're young, and they're going to be there. They're going to be contenders.
All right, I think we're having some issues with an echo. I don't know where the echo is coming from, but I don't hear it on my end. But yeah, as far as Anthony Lynn goes, personally, I don't think Anthony Lynn is gonna be in there much longer. Unfortunately, I don't think it's by no fault of his own. He was one of the guys that I also campaigned for to get this job here in Buffalo, but obviously things didn't work out, and it is what it is. I don't think that he's a horrible coach, personally. I don't think he's the greatest coach in the world either. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. They have a quarterback in place, so this may be a chance for them to have a changing of the guard, if you want to call it that. But moving on from that, obviously Josh Allen. Let's talk about it. There's an echo in my head, but I'm used to Jesus. Josh Allen today. I thought he was up and down. I thought that possibly the extra focus on the run game today sort of threw the passing game out of whack, along with the absence of John Brown. We've seen the absence of John Brown multiple times this year. changed the pass offense drastically. He's a little off. He played a little bit too much hero ball once again, and we need to talk about that. So what was your overall take on Josh Allen today? Fred, I'll come to you first.
I mean, I thought he commanded the game well. I mean, like I said, I think he was forcing a few things, and missing John Brown is huge. But you got to give your hats off to Gabriel Davis. I mean, this guy made some plays. He helped out this team. He scored a touchdown. But overall, I mean, I think Josh Allen he did a good job of controlling the game and having managing the game pretty much. But, missing John Brown is definitely a weapon that we're missing on this offensive side. But you know what? You got to look at it like Devin Singletary played hard today. Moss played hard. And those are the factors that we want to see as Bills fans, I mean, myself anyways, going further into the season, these two young running backs carrying this team. It can't always be Josh Allen, but he managed the game well today.
He did well with the opportunities he was given in this game, I felt, when he had the football in his hands and when he was asked to do something with the ball in his hands on set of third down or what have you. He made the most of those opportunities, but those turnovers he had in this game, you simply can't be making those turnovers. I saw somewhere in the comments, somebody touched on it. When you're playing a playoff team, you're not going to get away with turning the ball over 3 times in a game. And I think all of us understand that. Josh Allen understands that. Sean McDermott understands that. They both acknowledge that factor in their post-game press conferences. So I'm not necessarily worried about this team not realizing that they can't make those mistakes. But like you touched on, Jeremy, this is a completely different passing attack when John Brown isn't on the field. And I think the culmination of everything, you get your offensive lineman back, you get Mitch Morse back playing at center, you lose John Brown for the next 3 weeks, which is unfortunate, but I do want to see John Brown be 100%, be ready to play for that playoff push. He's going to be coming back as soon as, I believe, the Denver game, unless I'm mistaken. So you want John Brown back for the playoff push more so than these next 3 games, obviously. And it is a huge opportunity for Gabe Davis. And Gabe Davis did make plays when called upon today, but you'd like to see a little more from Gabe Davis. But then again, it was a very run-oriented day for the Bills offense in totality. So I thought Josh Allen played okay when he was asked to. Those 3 turnovers, those just simply can't happen, and they need to be cleaned up. There's no excuse or what have you about it. He completed 75% of his passes, so he was an efficient quarterback today. He did what was asked to, but like I've said a couple times now, those turnovers obviously need to get cleaned up.
No, they definitely do need to get cleaned up, and obviously we can't be throwing the ball up, especially with 6 minutes left in the game. At that point, you have to take that sack. No matter what, even if you take the sack, the clock's going to keep moving. You can't do things like that, and we saw it a couple times today where he's throwing the ball out of sacks. At some point, that's going to end up very badly for this team. It's going to end up in 6 for another team. So you got to be really, really careful with that. Sometimes you just got to know when to play as dead and just leave it dead. But overall, I thought he played a solid game. Like I said, I do believe that the game plan coming into the day was to focus on the run. And I think it threw off the rhythm of the passing game a little bit. Obviously, if you look at the numbers for the receivers and the targets, they kind of forced the ball to Stephon Diggs a little bit at the beginning of the second half to get the ball in his hands. Obviously, I think that was pretty obvious of them doing that. But other than that, like I said, I was really ecstatic to see the running game get going today. We've been touching on this for a couple weeks about using Moss, using Singletary, and I've heard everything from, the offensive line not getting pushed, your guards are horrible, Singletary is horrible. I don't know where that even comes from. I mean, if you're saying Devin Singletary is horrible, you need to throw in the film for when they actually give the kid the ball, and or you're just not looking at the film, whatever. Zach Moss did what he had to do today. With this running game, this team is a legit Super Bowl contender. Without a running game, I think that we could be a one and done, or maybe win our first playoff game and move on to the second round and go into a road and possibly lose. And I think Sean McDermott realizes that. Fred, what do you think about the running game?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to agree with everything you said. Here's the thing is that you got to run the ball. You can't be one-dimensional going into playoffs because a lot of this team in the NFL, it's a copycat league. If they see a way that you can be a team in the NFL, they're going to copy it. And if you don't have a running game, they're going to drop back in nickel. They're going to put coverage over the top. They're going to run a cover three. You're not going to be able to run. You got to get that running game going. It's plain and simple. We have the studs. And I'll tell you what, Devin Singletary, to me, ran angry today. There was that one run that he broke, and he ran angry. And you know what? You had said earlier, that you got to get these young running backs into a rhythm. They got to touch the ball at least 10 times a game. They got to get into a rhythm. And if you can't have that running game going into playoffs, you're not going to succeed in the NFL. You're just not going to.
I think everybody, it's very well known how good Josh Allen is off of play action. It was good to see this Bills rushing attack finally get in gear today. This is just the second time this season that we've been able to say that, the first time since the New England performance. And that's really been a focal point because like we've talked about throughout the duration of the season, you can't be one-dimensional going into the playoffs. You can't have a one-dimensional offense because then you're too easy to stop, and there really is no poker face on that side of the ball, and deception has a lot to do with what is open to you as an offensive coordinator, as an offensive play caller. So having this Bills up rushing attack get in gear today is it's a big deal, especially going forward this final playoff push, these last 5 games of the year. Having these 2 running backs have a day like today, the one thing that I want to see going forward is see the offense work in synergy, see this passing attack work well with this rushing attack. I understand it's kind of contradicting myself saying that Josh Allen's the best play action quarterback in the league. Well, yeah, he's been the best play action quarterback in the league while not having very good rhythm with synergy with the play calling and setting up, having plays set up the next play and the play after that. So that's the next step in this Bills offense that I'd like to see them make. And then that's really when we can see a Super Bowl contending offense, an offense that's multidimensional and multifaceted and is 3-dimensional in how they can approach any and every single game.
Some people will say, and I'm looking at the comments here, some people will say you don't need a running game to be successful in this league. And I tell you, I totally disagree. Does the running game need to be a focal point like it was in the 80s or early 90s? Absolutely not. But do you need to be opportunistic with the running game? Yes, you do. We have 2 running backs in Devin Singletary and Zach Moss who are not just good runners. And obviously Devin Singletary has, I want to give him kudos for his pass catching ability now as well. He's definitely worked on that and it definitely shows. But these guys are tough runners between the tackles. They're not easy guys that, when you wrap up one person, they're going to get them down. It's not guaranteed. These guys, you need 2 or 3 guys to bring these kids down. You have to game tackle. And today, I think they both show, obviously they don't, not the home run ability, but chunk yards ability.
Power back.
Well, yeah, both. I mean, they're both quick. Yep. And like I said, they'll pick up chunk yards on you. And I think today they both displayed very good vision, very good decision making. And I thought probably with the 2 weeks of practice that they were extremely decisive today. There was no indecision behind the line of scrimmage. And as far as the offensive line goes, they seemed to be in cohesion with the running game today. It seemed like the first couple weeks of the year, they were just like completely off. Like they were letting guys run free, letting these kids get hit 2 yards in the backfield. Obviously, we had a couple mishaps in pass protection today. Kind of expected, coming off a bye. But I thought the running game was good. I have no complaints. I mean, these guys racked up the yardage today.
Well, from center to left, your offensive line consists of the only players on that offensive line that returned from last year. So that probably has a lot to do with it. This is the first time this season that we've seen John Feliciano and Mitch Morse get to play at extended period of time together in the same game. So I think that has a lot to do with the cohesion, as you touched on, in the running game and really being able to get their footing underneath them. If it's one down point on this offensive line from today, it has to be with Brian Winters. In pass protection and in run blocking, Brian Winters, he just continues to not look good at all. He really. I don't know how this guy is one of the 5 best offensive linemen on this team. I really can't recall a day where I came away saying Brian Winters didn't even look bad. He did not look good today at all. And this has really been a problem ever since week 3, I feel like. And, it is what it is at this point, considering you're at this point of the season. It's either Brian Winters or Ike Bacher at this point. And to be quite honest with you, I'm not really sure which one I'd rather see out there, considering Ike Bacher could potentially have more upside than Brian Winters. But this really isn't the point or time of the season when you start tinkering around and playing with your offensive line like they have pretty much the majority of the entire season. And it's not really their own fault. They've had injuries to deal with in that area of their on their depth chart. But with Brian Winters, you hope to see him progress or get a little better somewhat. Today also, I didn't think Darrell Williams had a good day in pass protection. Obviously, I mean, he was playing against a guy like Joey Bosa. That's not an excuse to look the way he did today, but I don't think it was his best performance by far. That right side did not have a good day today, and hopefully they can improve upon it going forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, they actually started Winters at the left guard spot. Then they moved John Feliciano over there, and then I think that we had better success with him there after they moved him back to the right guard. I just think that Winters is a liability. I really do. I'm watching him the last couple of weeks. I mean, he had some penalties and everything. So, I mean, he's a liability, really.
I don't know who's a liability or not. Like I said, I'm not going to dog anybody yet on this offensive line. And the reason I'm not going to do is because obviously we know interior offensive line play is all about cohesion. And we've been moving pieces around. We've been losing people. Feliciano's been at center. Morris has been at center. Ryan Bates has been at center. Boddiker's been at left guard. Winter's been at left guard and right guard. Feliciano was at right guard today. I think we have to give him a little bit more time as far as the pass protection goes. But it started up front today with the running game.
Yep.
I felt like the offense as a whole was rusty today. That's really what I think the issue was. I think it was rusty, and I think we attacked the game a tad bit differently than we have the other 10 weeks, 11 weeks of the season. So I think that once we see us going up against San Francisco next week, I think you're going to see better pass blocking. I do. And I think that this 5 that we have, I don't think we're going to see a switch again. I think this is the 5, barring the injury, that you're going to have for the rest of the season. It's going to be Morris. It's going to be Winters. And no matter how people feel about Winters, he ain't coming out the lineup. Okay? And I'm going to give you a little tidbit. Just last week, I was in town at Frankie Primo's, and so was Josh Allen was at Frankie Primo's eating at the same time. And you know who's eating with Josh Allen? Brian Winters. He ain't coming out the lineup. I can believe you. I can almost guarantee you that. Just saying. It is what it is. When quarterbacks hang with the offensive linemen, the offensive linemen are normally starters. Am I wrong?
Right. No, you're right.
All right.
So it's always been.
So it's always been. So just saying. I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So as far as the Josh Allen play, and as you guys watching the show tonight, I want you guys to do me a favor. Give me what you think. Give me a grade for Josh Allen in the chat, and I'll start getting these grades up on the screen. A through F, no F minuses or nothing like that. Just A through F. All right, and I don't know why you guys give me F minus, but some people are just like that. It's what it is. Some guys don't think the team is mentally tough, but the defensive side of the ball today. These guys came to play. And we've been saying over the last couple of weeks that this defense has been improving each game. And today, I was surprised. We actually found a way to stop the run without that big 0-tech, 1-tech defensive tackle that we've been saying that we're not going to get, obviously, this late in the season, but we've been clamoring for. What changed today with this defense? What are you guys seeing difference? What are you guys seeing a difference in this defense? And we actually had a secondary that was fully healthy probably for the first time this season together. Clayton, what do you think?
That was a huge factor going in this week, and I sang that song on the Overtime podcast. I said it on the Saturday Night Tailgate. This is the first time this season that the Bills had their entire secondary intact going into this game. Not a single safety, not a single corner. Every single one of them, Josh Norman, Levi Wallace, Trey White, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, D. Marlowe, Saran Neal. They had all the versatility and flexibility you could have wanted out of this secondary today. And Keenan Allen was kind of shut out today. And I'll touch on that in a second. But in regards to your question about the run game and how the Bills did stopping Austin Ekeler and this passing attack and Justin Herbert, I was kind of nervous after Austin Ekeler was activated. I thought it was going to be difficult for this Bills defense to try and keep under wraps Hunter Henry as well as Austin Ekeler. I thought if it was just Hunter Henry going in this game and Austin Ekeler ended up not being activated, I thought would have been fine and they would have been pretty well off. But after seeing Austin Ekeler being activated, I was quite nervous. But this Bills defense did a good job keeping his production and his efficiency under wraps. They did allow a long run by Josh Kelly that ultimately led to a touchdown drive. But that's going to happen. That seemed to be a breakdown in communication of the play or what have you, and just seemed like the Chargers had a better play drawn up for what the defense had drawn up. But I thought overall this Bills defense did an excellent job today. And I think a large part in credit to why the Bills run defense is really starting to kind of take a turn for the better, if you will. It has to do with Tremaine Edmonds refinding his footing after a lackluster beginning of the season with that AC joint strain that he suffered in Week 1 against the Jets. These last 3 games, Tremaine Edmonds has looked like he had his 2019 form, and he's refound that kind of athletic freak, that player that's flying from sideline to sideline. And he's looking very good in the absence of Matt Milano. I can't wait to see what these two can do together once Matt Milano returns from injured reserve, hopefully, if not next week, then the week after.
Fred?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. What Clayton said about the secondary being healthy, but you also got to look at A.J. Klein today. Again, this guy, he's in the right spot. He's making sacks. I mean, he's making tackles. He's finally in the position where he's having success. And I think you also got to look at Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver, he's not getting pushed around. He was penetrating today. And then you got Jerry Hughes coming off the left edge, and he was making plays as well. So I think right now this defense is starting to click on all cylinders. I think they're finally figuring it out, and I think the lack of OTAs and mini camps and everything, now you got these guys, they're incohesive, and they're starting to play. They're starting to make plays. And again, Clayton touched on it about Tremaine Edmonds. He's healthy now. I mean, you think about it. This guy, his job is as a linebacker is to make tackles. And when you have a shoulder injury, you can't make tackles. He's healthy again, and it's starting to show. This defense they're going in the right direction right now.
Yeah, Tremaine Edmonds. I mean, this is something that me and Zoe have talked about, and Zoe broke it up. Say as he gets healthier, you're going to see a different Tremaine Edmonds, and he wasn't lying. But yeah, definitely kudos to AJ Klein here, and the performance that he's had the last 3 to 4 weeks. AJ Klein is playing some very confident football, and it's allowing us not to have to rush Matt Milano back. Because I do believe when he's playing with the torn pec, he should not have been playing with that, in my personal opinion. But our defense is so bad that they would take anything they could get, and if they could use them on only third downs, it's fine. But Matt Milano was making up for that. Now, there are at some points on the times on the field, like when it's like 3rd and 7, I don't want Matt Milano out there checking Austin Eckler. We do have someone like a Darren Lee that I think we need to get in rhythm to get out there, or we need to go to a nickel, bring a safety like a Dean Marlowe, someone into the box to cover that. But other than that, I mean, as far as being a physical football player the last 3 to 4 weeks, AJ Klein has been the most physical football player on this Bills team as a whole. Offense, defense, special teams, you name it. And he's out there hitting somebody and putting somebody on the ground.
Well, the fact remains that his strong suit as a football player is when he's moving forward. Anytime you asked AJ Klein to drop back into coverage, we saw his weaknesses and what he's incapable of doing out there on the defensive side of the ball. In these last 3 weeks, I think they really have made it a focus more so to have AJ Klein moving forward and, taking his steps and run fits rather than dropping back into coverage or sending him as a blitzer. And today, you saw him he had another sack and a half today. You saw him wrap up Justin Herbert for a sack, and Joshua Kelly kind of whiffed on the block, but he was able to maintain his balance and finish the play. And I will say this in regards to Matt Milano coming back. I'm not necessarily going to say we can take our time with Matt Milano coming back. I haven't seen enough from AJ Klein to be like, well, we can take time and not rush Matt Milano back. I'm not saying we need to rush Matt Milano back by any means, but I'm also not saying we can take our time with it. I think that when Matt Milano is back, they should bring him back. I think the increase or the uptick in play and quality and what have you in Matt Milano and what he brings to that defense, what he has in terms of his instincts, in terms of his athleticism and his explosiveness and how he attacks the football, I think all of that is so much of an upgrade. You can't be settling to have AJ Klein on the field longer than you have to. I think AJ Klein, once he's reduced to that third linebacker role, I think this defense is going to be humming on all cylinders. I think AJ Klein is perfectly suited to play that third linebacker role when called upon and play that situational blitzer role possibly that Lorenzo Alexander left from last year. And I think that's really kind of how they're using him at this point in the season. And they found that is really, maximizing his potential and utilization and how they can use him. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do when they get all 3 linebackers back.
As far as Matt Milano goes, when I say I don't feel like they need to rush him back is if you rush him back, he's going to get injured again. It's as simple as that. So he doesn't need to come back at 70%. He doesn't need to come back at 80%. He doesn't need to come back at 90%. He needs to come back when he's 100%, or he's going to be back on the IR again. We've already tried this. And he has a history of being hurt. So that's why I'm saying no, you don't need the rushing back. And if AJ Klein is playing fine and your defense can continue to play this way, because we've had solid games versus Arizona, and obviously that game took a turn in the second half, but up until that third, fourth quarter, it was a solid game by the defense. We had another solid game today. And as far as you look at the schedule, you know, where on the schedule do you say we can't win any of these games without Matt Milano? I can't say San Francisco. We should beat San Francisco with or without Matt Milano. Pittsburgh, you know what? You may say Pittsburgh is you need Matt Milano, but guess what? He may not be back by then. And if he's 80%, you have to think long term, and you're thinking playoffs. Denver, you don't need him to win that game, in my opinion. Hell, they didn't have a quarterback today. Who knows what's going to go on with that situation? And Shane, and absolutely, I want to comment on that too. Absolute shame on the NFL. Absolute shame on the NFL for putting the Denver Broncos in that situation. Everybody's dealing with something. Every team is dealing with something, and I get it. They didn't break any protocols. Shame on you for sending them out there with a damn quarterback. That's a shame. That was a shame. And I watched that game. It was shameful. It was awful, and it was disgrace to the entire league. And I don't care if they're not a playoff team. I don't care if they're not a marquee team or a big market team, but shame on them.
Absolutely. And you know that the Denver Broncos even went to one point to look for a coordinator to come in and be their quarterback, and the NFL turned them down and said no. So that's just horrible. The NFL should have gave this team a break. The Ravens aren't going to have Lamar, and they pushed that game from, Thursday, now to Sunday, and now to Tuesday. They should have did the same thing for the Broncos. Absolutely right. NFL, they're missing the boat on this one. Not even right.
I see you see Coach Big D on Twitter. They didn't wear their masks, breaking the protocol. Come on, stop it. The Titans went and had a freaking practice after their facility was closed, and they got their game pushed back.
So it happened to the Titans. What? There was no rules. There was no broken. Nothing happened to the Titans.
Well, they got a fine, but that was after the fact that we had to play them on a Tuesday. Yeah. So now I'm sorry, I disagree. You don't send a team out there without a quarterback. That's awful. That's shameful in the league. Roger Goodell and his team should be ashamed of themselves for that. And you know what? Even if it happened in a couple weeks when we had to play them, I would not want to play an NFL team like that without a quarterback. I'd take the W, but I wouldn't want to play them like that. I'm just saying.
I wouldn't want to watch the game. I think it's more and more evident as the season goes on that the NFL is kind of making it up as they go. They never really had any sort of established plan. I remember us talking about this leading up to the Titans game. The NFL really didn't have a plan on what would happen when there was an outbreak amongst an NFL locker room. Because that's really what it felt like in regards to how they handled the Titans situation. And like you just touched on, they didn't punish them. There was no kind of repercussions. It might have been a slight – I think, yeah, you're right. They did get fined, but there was all sorts of rumored punishment. As we saw, there was pictures of them practicing after being told they can't have any in-person meetings or practices and what have you. And then, you see a team like the Ravens who have a very marketable player like Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP, have their game pushed back 5 days so that Lamar Jackson could potentially have a higher chance of playing, whereas with a team like the Broncos who lose all their quarterbacks on a moment's notice, they're not even 24 hours before kickoff, and they have to come up with some sort of plan. It was a disgrace, and it's very shameful as to how they handled business in that regard today.
And it wasn't even that. You got to look at it like the NFL came out after with the rules about the face mask on the sideline. They were telling all the coaches, if you don't wear your mask, it's a $100,000 fine. Then they came out with another implemented rule that was stating that if you don't wear that, you're going to start losing draft picks. Now you have a team, the Tennessee Titans, they all just go to a different location and they actually work out together. And it's just fine. And now you got a team, it's a young team. I mean, they're not winning. But at the same time, they lose 3 of their quarterbacks. You can't work around this team, you know what I mean, to help them out. They haven't broken any rules.
No, but you know what? This is nothing new for the NFL, and hell, like I said earlier in the year, we had to prepare for 2 teams at one time.
Yeah.
And that was fair to us for not breaking any protocols and doing everything the right way. And we know that Buffalo has a very strict protocol, COVID protocol. And I mean, even we couldn't even avoid it. We got hit by it with the tight end room. We got hit it with the DB room in Arizona. And in Buffalo, they tend to do the right things with the protocols.
Right.
So it's, I just thought it was a disgrace. I know this is Bill's show, but had to touch on that. Sorry, people. We had to touch on that though.
No, you're right. You had to touch on it. It's the NFL. You really got it. You got to bring it up.
Right. So now, Fred, you mentioned something that I thought was a very good point there about Jerry Hughes switching to the left side of the line. And I think we talked about this in an earlier show this season about why we don't switch him up. His production has ramped up a lot in the last 5 to 6 games here. Do you think that it's because of the switch? Do you think it's because now that tendency that team seeing on film with Jerry on the right, and now you don't know where he's lining up at, is the difference?
I really do. I mean, I'm seeing the himself, how he looks like rejuvenated coming off that left side. And remember when we talked about this when Jerry Hughes, I thought it was you, JT, that said that Jerry Hughes can only play on the right side. That's the reason why we got to keep him. He can only play on the right side. Mm-hmm. But now it's showing that he's more dimensional and he's able to come off that edge. And I think that's the reason why you're not seeing Trent Murphy now is because Jerry Hughes is making some noise on that left side. And it's great to see. Finally, he has a purpose.
I love seeing the resurgence of Jerry Hughes' production, considering, excuse me, on this show, it was really kind of a running joke as to where Jerry Hughes has been the last 3 years. So seeing this resurgence of production, and, Jerry Hughes always pops up on film with pressures and what have you, and how he affects the passer, not necessarily with sacks, but with pressure, which does affect the quarterback and ultimately affects the play. But on this show, we've griped about how he doesn't get home. He doesn't get to the quarterback. We've seen instances where Jerry Hughes will get to the quarterback, but he gets busted out on a sack. And, that's still going to count as a pressure, but he still missed the tackle and, what have you. But, Fred, you kind of touched on how Trent Murphy wasn't activated today. I think that has a lot to do with A.J. Epinesa and what he's been able to do in limited opportunities, and they get him back from the concussion. And let's not forget, A.J. Epinesa has made plays when called upon in limited opportunities. So I think getting him back at this stage of the season, and I think it's very promising considering seeing how the Bills really handle their rookies and handle them the last 2 years specifically. I mean, you see them go throughout the whole season barely using A.J. Epinesa, barely using Zach Moss. Last year, you saw them go through a majority of the start of the season barely using Devin Singletary, and also now they barely use Gabe Davis because there wasn't really by necessity. They have 3 solid receivers in front of them. But now you're at that point of the season where rookies are typically hitting their rookie wall, and this team is afforded the opportunity to not have to rely on their rookies as much. So their players that they're calling in situations, they're not hitting a wall, and they're fresh, and they're ready to go for this back stretch of the season, whereas they weren't really being used. They didn't really have a high usage rate at the start of the year. I'm really excited to see what A.J. Epinesa could do, assuming he's getting more opportunities going forward, as the Trent Murphy inactivation kind of indicates.
And you got to remember that the Bills did the same thing last year with Ed Oliver. Remember, they played him a little bit, and then they pulled back the reins, and they used him more towards the end of the season. So that maybe that's a game plan that McDermott does with these young defensive players.
Well, it wouldn't be far-fetched. We rotated right tackles all the way through the wild card game last year, so it's not far-fetched. And Dan Gabita for Cold Sox brings up a point. Did anyone notice that Harrison Phillips was holding his ground day against the run? Doesn't show on the stats, but he played well. I think one of you guys touched on early in the year that returning back from the ACL injury, you didn't have the proper rehab in the offseason, obviously, to the last part of rehab, which is actually getting back on the field and getting that contact and getting back used to it.
And the confidence.
In the confidence. You spoke on that earlier this year. Was today deactivation of Trent Murphy, is this a chess move? Is this the defensive line we're going for? Because actually, Daryl Johnson was in the lineup today. Which, if people don't talk about Daryl Johnson's a huge special teams player for the kickoff unit. If you guys haven't noticed, besides he almost killed the guy last time they played.
Big number 92.
Yeah. Is this a chess match right now? Is it still filling out, or will there be weeks that we possibly may see Harrison Phillips activated? Okay, now this week we have this matchup with Trent Murphy, because it seems like the 3 guys that are going back and forth for the activation now is going to be Murphy, Phillips, and Johnson. Maybe with Epinesa mixed in as we get closer to the playoffs. It'll be interesting to see if Epinesa is actually active for that playoff game if and when it comes.
It's really interesting seeing what they can and might do with this defensive line, because Daryl Johnson's a guy I've wanted to see them get more opportunities along the edge this season too, and I think it's really promising seeing him get opportunities in the specific packages that he is. You look at that defensive line they send out there; it's Daryl Johnson, Quentin Jefferson, Ed Oliver, and then AJ Epinesa. That is a big set along the ends. You've got a guy who's he's more of a power rusher, and AJ Epinesa on one edge, and then you've got Daryl Johnson, who's 6'6" and has pterodactyl arms on the other end. That guy is huge. So I think getting these younger players their opportunities, giving them in-game reps, that is a huge part of their development and how they like to develop these players along the way. And I think Harrison Phillips having a solid game today, you can credit that partially to the bye week and having a week off. Because, when you're, especially with an off season like this year, where you kind of touched on it, Jeremy, he didn't have a complete off season and complete rehab process where he got to go completely through that the last stage of the process of getting back onto the field and regaining that confidence. A week off and that late in the season, that can completely change the complexion of your year going forward. That whole week off is a big deal, especially for defensive linemen who, people don't really talk about defensive linemen's durability, but that's something that you can kind of question throughout the course of a season. These guys, they don't take a lot of huge hits, but those small hits that accumulate over time, going through 12 weeks of an NFL season, having that week off, that's a big deal for offensive and defensive linemen up front. And I think you saw that today. I think you saw a very physical defensive line. And like Dan said in the comments, I think you saw a very solid day from Harrison Phillips, in my opinion, his best game since the Raiders game. So hopefully we can see more of that going forward, because it certainly impacted this Bills defense's ability to stop Austin Eckler and company.
And before we go forward, I want you guys in the chat to give us your grade for the defense today.
Yeah,
I'm curious to hear, because we did it a couple weeks ago, and I think we got a lot of C's and D's for that Cardinal game. So give us your grades in the chat there. I'd love to see what you guys are thinking about it. But no, yeah, I think getting Harrison Phillips in there is huge, because like I said, Vernon Butler, and I'll go back to it again, Vernon Butler is averaging on PFF a 48 grade against the run. I know we don't like PFF here in Buffalo, but that grade don't lie. Vernon Butler is not, he's the size of a zero tech in a one technique D tackle, but he didn't play like one. And obviously when we're using Quentin Jefferson, Ed Oliver, we're a little undersized in there, and we've spoken on Ed Oliver being that zero tech, one tech before, which has kind of stunted his production this year. And I think that's one guy that at some point we definitely did talk about and evaluate, because I think a lot of people are evaluating Ed Oliver completely wrong because of the scheme that we're in. If we can get Harrison Phillips healthy and playing like he was pre the torn ACL, this run defense is going to have a serious uptake. A serious uptake. Is he Star Lotulelei? As much as I don't want to say this, no, he's not. He's not Star Lotulelei. Okay, but he's the best run stopper in the interior that we're going to have if he's healthy and playing at his highest level, at the highest level he can play at. I mean, will anybody disagree?
No, I agree. I agree with you totally. And I touch on Clayton's point about what this team, the defense, is going to do. I think it's going to be based on what team we're playing. I mean, if you have a run-first team, I think you're going to see Harrison Phillips in it. Maybe he's deactivated, but if you got a team that's passing, I think they're going to have Epinesa in there just to help put pressure on the quarterback. I think it's just this. I think it's McDermott. And I think he's basing everything on what offense that we're facing week to week. I don't think it's just, okay, this player is healthy, we're going to put him out there. I think it's a game plan, and I think the Chargers come in, they have a good running game. I think that's why Harrison Phillips was activated this week. And the fact that he's becoming healthy again.
This is kind of a fun question, because I know through the week of discussion leading up to the game, it was a huge talking point about Keenan Allen. Do you think Chargers Nation needs to calm down on Keenan Allen a little bit? Because I know after seeing today, I wasn't overly impressed with a guy who's calling himself the best receiver in football and potentially the best receiver in the conference. I wasn't too impressed with Keenan Allen. I was actually really impressed with how Trey White was actually able to man up with Keenan Allen and stop him for the most part. And, that kind of falls in line with my expectations, because that's a player that Trey White's paid to cover. He's paid to cover Keenan Allen. And there were instances where he wasn't covering Keenan Allen on certain plays. But I thought this Bills secondary overall did an incredible job defending Keenan Allen, who I think he's an incredible route runner. I think he has good hands, but I don't think he's I don't think he's one of these top 5 wide receivers. I do think he's underrated, but I don't think he's as good as he's kind of marking himself up to be, or he's built up to be, or at least Chargers media builds him up to be as that.
What do you
You know
think,
what
Fred?
was funny? You know what was funny is the fact is that going into this game, I didn't hear anybody talk about Mike Williams. Mike Williams is the big physical wide receiver, and they didn't use him much today. Maybe only a couple times on the outside, but seriously, I mean, Keenan Allen, he's a great wide receiver. I mean, he's getting up there in age, but you got to look at Mike Williams. This kid is big. He's a big kid. I don't know why there's not more of a focal point on this guy, because I know he can high point the ball. And he's a beat. He towers over a lot of DBs. But you know what? I'm not going to say nothing bad about Keenan Allen, because he is a good wide receiver. He's got numbers to back it up. But I really wished, not wished, but I'm saying I don't know why they didn't put Mike Williams more involved in this offense today.
Well, the reason that I disagree with the point that Keenan Allen may not be a top 5 receiver, and I think Keenan Allen, he might be top 5. I think he's guaranteed top 7. And I've watched Keenan Allen. I've watched Keenan Allen since he came into this league, and I've watched Keenan Allen at Cal as well.
Yep.
There's nothing that he can't do on a football field. And as far as route running, he's not elite at anything as far as speed, size, but he's an elite route runner. And obviously, he studied and he learned a lot from Stevie Johnson. And I've talked to Stevie about this personally, and about Keenan Allen personally, about how he mentored him in San Diego and things as such. There's nothing there. I mean, you can't guard him. Today, we got lucky. There was a couple of drops that he had. And obviously, we have a guy on our team named Trey White who is starting to look like Trey White of old. Obviously, I think as his back heals, I think he's getting better, because I do think his back was an issue earlier in the year and why he didn't look exactly the same. But no, I think Keenan Allen is as good as advertised. I just think today we had Trey White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, a healthy Levi Wallace back. I don't know if Norman even got the field today, and Teron Johnson. And you're not going to go against a secondary with that many good players every week. You're not going to go against a secondary every week that can put a Trey White in man coverage on you. Everybody don't have a Trey White. That's why he's getting paid the $82 million.
Yeah.
So I think he's as good as advertised.
Okay, the only reason that led me to saying that is I simply can't say, because of those drops. I think that cold weather kind of affected his ability to catch the football today a little bit. Because, he is a West Coast guy. I understand it wasn't, it's not Buffalo weather at the end of November. It's not our typical weather that we get, but it is a little colder over on the East Coast. It's a way. I mean, I don't live over the West Coast, but it's a little colder. It's a little chillier. That ball comes in a little hotter and a little harder in these colder temperatures when your hands are freezing on the football field. So I thought that's really what kind of led me to asking you guys that, and seeing him able to catch some of those passes that you alluded to, JT. But I tend to agree with you. I think he's a good receiver, but I don't know. Because the big conversation leading up to this game was Stephon Diggs or Keenan Allen. And coming out of this game, I'd say Stephon Diggs is better. But, Keenan Allen, he's on the tail end of his career, I think. And by tail end, I think he's in the last 5 years. But he's still a solid wide receiver. I thought this Bills defense did do an incredible job stopping a player like Keenan Allen, because he really can wreck you if he's going up.
Well, if you go by
I think it was Justin Herbert today, to be honest with you. Those passes were on him. I don't think it was anything to do with Keenan Allen. He was in the right position to make a play. I just think the throws behind him, in front of him, I think you got to blame the young quarterback, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you look at Stephon Diggs' numbers, you look at Stephon Diggs' numbers as well. I mean, his numbers weren't anything to sneeze at today. I mean, he only had 7 catches for 39, and I believe Allen had 4 for 40. So, big shout out to Trey White, but also big shout out to Chris Harris Jr. today, who is a top flight corner in himself. So it is what it is. Actually, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I was talking to my co-host from the Bills Jack podcast, James Mallory, and he actually told me a story about how the University of Buffalo could have gotten Keenan Allen, because we had his brother, I think it was Zach Maynard or Eric Maynard, the quarterback. He was here in Buffalo at first, and he ended up transferring to Cal to be the quarterback for his younger brother, which is Keenan Allen. And we could have got both from here in UB at one point. But hey, UB's doing good. We just had a guy run for 438 yards in Jared Patterson and 8 touchdowns. Gee, shout out to him.
Shout out
up, man.
to that
70
offensive
points.
line.
Yeah, shout out to him. Go Horns, man. I mean, jeez.
Horns up.
That was crazy. That's insane. That is insane.
70 points.
Yeah, I think Zach and Devin watched that and said, man, we got to do something today. all of Buffalo gonna be calling for them to take this kid, you know.
Yeah.
So we know how long Bills fans have clamored about the passing the Khalil Mack pick. You know, man, you let somebody in our backyard get away, even though we had Mario Williams, Jerry Hughes, Darius, and Williams. But, people
There's
still
still room for him.
yeah, I bet afterthought. But hey, if you guys got any questions, put your question in the chat. I know Cody else wants to touch on something, and we'll take care of our guy Cody. Cody's always here with us, late, early, middle day, whatever. Cody's here. Cody says, "Can y'all touch on something for me today? It seemed their D line didn't look that big. They all looked fast and strong. Was that their defensive profile, or was it just because they usually sent 5 rushers?" That's a good question. Yeah, our defense.
We're small anyways up front. We already know that. We're missing the big bodies. We don't have the big bodies. We're small anyways.
Well, it's an adjustment that they made a handful of weeks back because, during that early portion of the season when this Bills defense couldn't get any kind of pressure, couldn't get any kind of production from that defensive front, regardless if it was linebackers, defensive linemen, defensive tackles, ends, what have you. That's really when you saw them not sending 5 guys. And like you touched on, they're starting to send more guys. And because they don't quite have that size, because they don't have their Star Lotulelei size, because Vernon Butler is, his athletic profile, you would figure he'd be a one-technique defensive tackle, but his play style does not fit that of one technique defensive tackle, similar to that of Jordan Phillips from last year, if any of you people remember those conversations that we had. But, having that smaller profile on defense, that can be an advantage. Oh, he's talking about the Chargers defense. Okay, because, yeah, you're right. You're right about the Chargers defense being smaller, being more athletic. And that's something that I felt could have been an advantage for the Bills offense going into this game with their rushing attack. And it ended up being the exact approach that I thought could have worked for them. You're talking about smaller linebackers, smaller defensive tackles. They do have Linval Joseph and Jerry Tillery, who's kind of a tweener now. He was a first-round pick, and they're not really sure if he's best suited to play inside or best suited to play defensive end. And you saw, really the only beef they have on that defensive line is really with, a guy like Joey Bosa, who I thought the Bills, they didn't really do a good job of containing him in certain situations today, but they did do a good job of containing him in others. So, I mean, there's some give and take with star football players like that, but I thought this Bills offensive line, players like John Feliciano, Mitch Morse, kind of big boy, the smaller front for this Chargers defensive line and these linebackers. Denzel Perryman, he's a thumper, but he's only 240 pounds and he's 5'11", so he's smaller and he gets bottled up by blockers pretty easily. The same can be said about Kenneth Murray, and Kaiser White was out of this game. So I thought this athletic, fast front for the Chargers kind of played against them, and I thought that's what the Bills saw leading up to this game on film, is that they have a smaller front and they used it to their advantage and ran the ball down their throats.
Plus, Ingram wasn't in today either, so that was another part we had to account for. So, I mean, if you had Ingram and Bosa, I mean, we would have had our hands full today.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's the way Buffalo looked today. It didn't surprise me at all coming out of the bye week. I don't. It didn't surprise me. Let me take this question. I'll get to that. Mike Boger says, "Why does Josh refuse to hand the ball off on the read option?" You know what? I noticed that as well. He keeps that ball a whole lot on the read option, and he's not really reading. He's making up his mind before reading the defense, and this is the part of the hero ball that I'm like, listen, we got to get that in check before we get to the playoffs. The not taking the sacks and throwing the ball as you're being wrapped up and going down to the ground, taking every read option just about. That is an issue, and I do see it as a problem. It's Josh trying to do too much.
He's not reading the DN. He's not reading it. The DN, he should be reading the DN. If the DN's first move is going to be inside, then he's going to take it to go outside. If the DN goes on the outside, he's going to hand it off. He's not reading the DN properly. That's the only thing I can think of right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's making his mind up before. Yep. Actually reading. It's like, okay, this is the call coming in. I'm keeping it. So I'm not a fan of the RPO and how we're running it right now because we're not running it correctly.
That's Josh Allen's gamer getting the better of him. And to be honest, that's kind of an issue he's had with those read looks since he came to Buffalo.
And it's not only that, but if you think about it, when you see this RPO come about, it's after we have already made a bad play on offense. So he's trying to get some of that back. That's what I'm noticing.
Maybe I don't know, but like I said, I have to agree with Mike's question because I find myself questioning the same thing on a couple of the reads, like why ain't he giving the ball off? Because the DN is sitting outside and there's a gaping gap there between the guard and center for either Singletary or Moss to get at least 5 to 6 yards, and it's Josh running outside, getting contained by the DN and pretty much having to go down to the ground. Thankfully, he's not taking a lot of hits. I know we had a big scare there today with the ankle.
Yeah.
And he came back, but you guys realize when you see him go down, how important he is, because I think everybody
came in for one play.
Yeah.
Came in for one play was negative yards. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I mean that was a horrible miscommunication by Darrell Williams there, but I mean our season up in smoke if he goes down. Were you guys surprised about the inactive list today with Tyler Croft actually being active? That shock you?
Actually, I was, and the only reason I said that is because I seen Lee Smith out there, and we know how Lee Smith can be with penalties. But yeah, I was shocked that Tyler Croft wasn't out there. I know he's healthy, and I know that he's involved with the passing game. Well, he has been for the last couple of games. But yeah, I was definitely shocked that he was not active today.
That was the first indication to me pregame that this was going to be a run-heavy day, because that inactivation spot is normally Lee Smith's, like Fred just said. So the fact that Tyler Croft was inactive today in favor of Lee Smith, that's what led me to believe that this could possibly be a much more run-oriented day for the offense. And as it was, you saw, and as Cody had said in the comments about Dawson Knox actually having some production today, catching that first drive touchdown, I thought, I don't know. I want to see more from Dawson Knox every single week. And, I understand it's difficult. He's kind of running into the same issue he ran into in Ole Miss, where there's so much talent on this offense between the running backs, between the receivers. He didn't really have much talent at quarterback in Ole Miss, but you get the point. There's a lot of mouths to feed on this offense, and Dawson Knox is really kind of the one that goes hungry, and he's not even the first one that goes hungry. More weeks than not, it's the running backs. So Dawson Knox, he's kind of the fourth or fifth option in this offense. And you can kind of say, oh, well, that's unfortunate, but Dawson Knox, I don't know. He's had his opportunities to make plays with the football. He's had his opportunities when Josh Allen targets him. And sometimes, obviously on this play that you see on your screen right now, he made an incredible catch on a ball that Josh Allen threw behind him, and he caught the touchdown pass. But there's been many occasions this season where Josh Allen doesn't throw him the ball because Dawson Knox doesn't have reliable hands. And until he proves that he does, I don't think you're going to see Josh Allen look his direction when he has other star-studded wide receivers like Stephon Diggs, like Cole Beasley. This week he didn't have him, but when he comes back, John Brown, you're starting to see a little bit of chemistry build up with Gabe Davis possibly, and that's nice to see at the end of the season. But I'd love to see some more from Dawson Knox, but I'm worried that it might be a little too late for him to get acclimated in this offense and be a consistent contributor.
I think it's just another weapon for Josh Allen. I mean, if he can develop and to be that tight end that Josh Allen has, the go-to guy, and you got to think about it, we're going to have him for 5 years on cheap. So I think that if he can stay healthy and he can catch the ball, he's going to be another weapon for Josh Allen. I was impressed with his big body that he was able to keep himself in bounds in the back of the end zone and make that reception today.
Well, he better have made that reception, because he dropped another ball, and that one there, they would have ran him out of Buffalo. They would have ran him out of Buffalo. But no, I do think that we need to get him acclimated a little bit more, like you said, Clayton. I think we need to get him a rhythm a little more, because it's apparent we're not taking him out of the lineup. And I said this earlier in the year, that the reason you're not taking him out of the lineup is because of his athleticism. It's the potential big chunk play of his athleticism. It's the fact that even though he struggled last year as a rookie, he made some big time and tough catches. So we can't question his mental toughness, but I do believe that he's not coming out of his lineup because he is a mismatch for the defense. If you put the wrong linebacker on him, he's going to run by him.
Yep.
So I think that potential, you put an interesting post up with the picture with Hunter Henry today, talking about future duo. If this salary cap does not drop in the offseason and it's a regular salary cap, the Bills actually have the 30-40 million cap space that they should have, then it is very possible that Hunter Henry could end up Buffalo, because I'm not saying that the Bills are going to continue this Dawson Knox experiment after this year.
See, that's the issue that I've been speaking about it throughout the week after Cody Ford went down. Obviously, we wish him a speedy recovery and he gets back to full health sooner rather than later. But, it's time we talk about facts about that 2019 draft class. Next year really kind of is a prove-it year for Cody Ford. Next year really is a prove-it year for Dawson Knox. And there really hasn't been much to really give anybody kind of any promise that there's going to be that rebound year for either of those players. There's going to be that breakout year for either of those players. Have we seen it happen for the Bills before with a player such as Deion Dawkins, where he had a good first year, he had a questionable second year, and came out the third year? I mean, in Deion Dawkins' case, you saw him come out there, prove it, get a contract extension, and keep running with it. And he never turned back. And we haven't seen that second season Deion Dawkins. I mean, there's been glimpses of bad plays, but any tackle's going to have bad plays when you're on an island. But no, the point is next year really is a prove-it year for both of those players. And if the Bills have an opportunity to improve the tight end position this offseason, they should take it. Because if they can get a proven player like Hunter Henry, and the only the concerns with Hunter Henry throughout his whole career is his health. And this season, he seems to have refound his footing with his health. He seems to be healthy, and he's been a productive player in that Chargers offense. And he and Josh Allen are friends outside of football. I believe they worked out together in California while he was staying out there. I think that's where the relationship was built. I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me on it, but I believe that's where it comes from. But if Hunter Henry continues to stay healthy and he's on the open market and he's a proven commodity, whereas Dawson Knox, there's still all these question marks surrounding him. I understand the potential with him. I understand the athleticism that he possesses. But if you have an opportunity to upgrade the position, like we talked about when we were considering bringing in Greg Olsen last offseason, if you have an opportunity to improve that position, you should take it. Because if the Bills can get a really good dynamic tight end in this offense, I think it changes the complexion of the offense, and you give Josh Allen, one more toy to play with in this offense. You're going to find some efficiency that you haven't even uncracked yet, and that's incredible considering the kind of efficiency that you've seen Josh Allen passing with this year.
And you look around the league, I mean, these star quarterbacks, they have that stud tight end there with them. Kelso, Kittle. I mean, you got to have that. Brady with Gronk. I mean, you got to have that stud tight end. People don't look at it and think that it's an important position. It's not just about blocking. If you got a tight end that can block and catch and is a big body, that's a huge factor in an offense. It's another weapon. It's another dynamic in an offense.
And I know our guy James Bialek was talking about the cap, and I actually want to discuss the cap a little bit. I don't want to get too much into it because I'll go for an hour about the cap space. If the cap next season, if it doesn't drop because of no fandom and things of that such in revenue, and it goes up to, I don't know, we're thinking with the 215, 213, that's possible. We'll probably be having about 30 to 35 million in space. There's a couple moves that Buffalo can make next year to free up more space for a move like Hunter Henry, because I would assume that bringing in a Henry would command maybe 12, 13 million per year. I'll have to look at the cap numbers as far as tight ends, but I'm assuming
he's at 10-8 right now.
He's at 10-8, and that's what is that the franchise tag or that's his extension?
I believe it was an extension, but it could have been the franchise tag. I don't remember. So
I couldn't imagine that he would command any more than 12 million per year. But if you do need to free up cap space, there's a couple of moves that you could make. You could possibly extend Micah Hyde 1 year, taking more money off the base salary for 2021. You could cut ties, which you should cut ties with Vernon Butler Jr. That would free up $5 million there.
Trent Murphy.
Trent Murphy is already coming off the book, so he's already accounted for in that cap space. John Brown, Mitch Morse, you can restructure as well. You can also remove, either extend Beasley or Brown, or if you feel like Gabe Davis is ready to go, you kind of cut ties with possibly, assuming with the injury problem now, probably John Brown before Cole Beasley, but you don't have to do that at all. But there's multiple things you can do to free up cap space to bring in a guy like Hunter Henry, because I mean, obviously you're not going to go shopping crazy in free agency. The only thing I could see them going crazy over is probably a big defensive tackle, but I don't know how that's going to play out with Star Lotulelei coming back next year, and he's still going to have two years remaining on his contract, I believe. So
yeah, you can't move Star after next year.
Maybe he can restructure though.
Yeah, that's a possibility. They could. I think you could end up seeing that Star deal turn into what they turned Tyler Kroft's deal this year, where they get rid of that last year and just bump up the guarantees but lower the overall number. I think that's a possibility that you can throw in there as well with Star Lotulelei to possibly free up some room.
Right. I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, but if John Brown's injury is something that they feel is going to be a long-term problem, I would not be opposed to bringing Kenny Stills into Buffalo. I'm just saying. They said they want to give him a contender. I would not be opposed to it at all. And he can give you insight on Miami as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if they brought in Kenny Stills. I'd be kind of surprised given their cap situation, the Bills that is, and the fact that Gabe Davis is really the first opportunity that he's had to get a decent workload all season, and given these next 3 games potentially, I wouldn't be opposed to it, like you said, Jeremy.
Yeah, we actually had a good question here that I wanted to talk to. Mike Boger also asked, "Are we missing DeMarco in the running game?" You know, I don't think so. I mean, we didn't put Pat DeMarco in for a lot of sets last year, right? He's like playing about 4% of snaps, and when he wasn't, it seemed like we were sending him on streak routes.
No.
Those wheels,
which we did send him on like 4 wheel routes last year. So I don't think we're missing Pat DeMarco at all. I forget he even got a bomb. Did he even get picked up?
No.
Okay,
no.
correct.
But the thing is that we were running that spread offense anyways. You don't really have a fullback in a spread offense. It's normally a single back with 4 wide. So we're running a spread. You don't really need a fullback.
Yeah, no, I don't think we need him in this offense at all. I mean, I forgot how much we saved. Like, I think we saved like $2 million, $3 million by
I thought he was an injury. Wasn't he an injury? They paid him for an injury?
It was an injury settlement, but that just means that you're healthy to come back and they're just selling out with you to get your money.
Well, it was his neck injury. He was kind of forcing an early retirement away.
Yeah. So there's one thing I know a lot of people have brought up, and we kind of I forgot to talk about the Hail Marys and the not knocking the ball down. So this is 2 times in a row. Hey, stop moving that stuff. There's 2 times in a row, 2 weeks in a row here, that we've had a Hail Mary. We did not get the ball down. The receiver made the catch. And today, when we saw the charge, I said, oh, God, they did it again. What is going on with these Hail Marys? A lot of guys are saying we should put Gabe Davis back there when this happens. I do believe that is an option if it is a Hail Mary going forward. But what are these guys doing? Are they not knocking it down? Are they going for interception? What are they doing? They going for stat padding, Fred?
I think the biggest thing is you just got to get up there and get a beat on the ball and just knock it down. Just knock it. Don't try to catch it. Just knock it down. That's my belief.
I don't know. There's a lot of factors that go into it. I think dumb luck has a little bit of something to do with it, as any Hail Mary. Dumb luck has something to do with it. The technique has something to do with it. But I think a generalization answer for the Bills secondary is a good one because, Jeremy, I know you and I have talked about it before. This Bills secondary, they do possess a lot. They possess instincts. They possess talent. They possess play recognition, what have you. One thing they do not possess, though, is top-tier athleticism. That guy who's going to fly from one sideline to the other within the time a quarterback releases the ball, the time that it hits the receivers. You don't have that. You don't have these guys that are jumping out of the gym. These guys aren't incredible athletes. You know, that's kind of where they made their money. You know, they were prove-it guys. They were underdogs. Micah Hyde, who was a middle-round pick, who was a nickel corner for the Packers, and he was a punt returner mostly. And a guy like Jordan Poyer, who was relegated to special teams because of his lack of athleticism. And a guy like Tre'Davious White, who fell as far in the draft because he simply didn't have those astounding athletic numbers at the combine. And, you know, we talk about how good this defense is and how good the secondary is, and they are. But if it's one thing they do not have and they do not possess is that top-tier athleticism. And in plays that require top-tier athleticism, such as a one where you're pretty much – it's a jump ball and someone's going to get it, and whoever gets it, it's going to be whoever high-pointed it, got to it first, swatted it down or whatever. I understand people are you know, bickering with Rachel Bush again about her saying, you know, hey, you have to understand these interceptions are incentivized, so you can't really blame players for trying to go for interceptions. Where, I mean, we can sit here and argue whether or not these players are going for interceptions or not, but I think that's kind of what I generalize it to, is the fact that this secondary doesn't possess top-tier athleticism, and I think a lot of it is dumb luck, yeah.
Well, at least she's keeping it real. I mean, with this,
yeah.
I didn't think about it like that. I guess she keeping it real. I guess it's free game up there, but yeah, no, they got to definitely do a better job with that. Like I said, I still think that the Arizona Hail Mary was just a perfect pass, perfect situation. The probability of catching it was like 2%. The probability of actually making that throw on the button like it was probably even less. But today versus the Chargers, that was just bad technique. That was everybody going for interception in a 10-point lead, trying to get that incentive. So, and whoever's arguing Rachel Bush, don't argue with Rachel Bush, okay?
Oh.
Just letting you know, now I don't argue with Reggie Bush. I don't play that. But I think, guys. I mean, we're 8-3. We're headed into a Monday night game versus a San Francisco 49 team that is. I mean, they got the worst luck out of anybody in this league this year. I feel bad for them, but I still want to take that W home next week. We can go in there. We can win 9 games. We've been 9-3 with at that point. How many games remaining? 4 games remaining at that point.
Yep.
And just for the record, Santa Clara has already said that they don't want no sports with contact be played in their area. So right now, the Arizona Cardinals are actually willing to give up their field for us to go there and play the 49ers on Monday Night Football.
Well, I mean, if San Francisco, they can just come to Buffalo.
I said the same thing. Come to Buffalo.
Just come to Buffalo. Just switch the game. Their season's over anyway. Just come on to Buffalo.
No, they beat the Rams today. Come on.
Their season's still over.
Yep.
Let's just give them some wings. We'll load up with some wings. We'll get Lenovo's, Papa Joe. We'll get over there and get them buckets and buckets of wing. We'll treat them nice. We'll give some nice Labatt's blue to drink before the game and things like that. We'll show them all the hospitality in the world. So come on to Buffalo. Let's play the game at home.
I think a big factor in this game, like Fred just said, they're planning on playing the game in Arizona. I forget the name of that stadium, but they plan on playing in Arizona, and I'm not sure if this tweet was talking about the Bills or the 49ers, but I saw that the plan was they were going to stay in Arizona, whatever team or both teams, if you will, where they were going to stay in Arizona throughout the entirety of the week. And if that were the Bills, that'd be very advantageous, as we've talked about with that slight effect that teams have when going West Coast to East Coast or East Coast to West Coast. That'd be very advantageous if the Bills could manage to stay on the West Coast that whole time. I'm not really sure if they were talking about the 49ers or the Bills in that situation. But, yeah, that's going to be a big game. You know, that's a 49ers team that regained a lot of confidence today, beating a Rams team that has been firing on all cylinders. And now you have to go to the West Coast and play this team on primetime football. And, you know, not having Sunday games at 1 o'clock seems to really affect this Bills team in some situations. You know, that's kind of been, I wouldn't say a kind of an Achilles heel, if you will, you know, proving that they can play on stages such as that. And, you know, we've seen this team play in primetime football, but playing with consistency, being able to execute in those situations on those stages with consistency, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a solid performance from this football team. I understand you're on primetime football. I understand you're playing on the West Coast and you're playing on Monday night. But this is a game that the Bills should win against the 49ers. You know, this team, like you touched on, Jeremy, they're rattled with injuries. They have 13 guys on injured reserve. This is a game that, you know, I understand that the Cardinals, you're not getting the best team that you could face in that situation, or excuse me, the 49ers. But this is a game that you need to go out there and handle. But regardless, this isn't a game that's going to make or break the Bills' season. I wouldn't call it an exhibition because it counts for your record on your for your season. But you know, you're playing an NFC opponent on the West Coast. It doesn't mean nearly as much as this Chargers game or the Broncos game, the Pittsburgh game the following week will. But it's definitely going to be an important game and a game where the Bills, hey, you should come away with a victory similar to that they did this week.
And not only that, but you do know that there's 4 primetime games for the Bills in December. There's no 1 o'clock games. So if you're saying they're struggling on prime time after 1 o'clock, well, they better learn on Monday to get those wins because they had 3 more after that.
Well, I asked a question. I mean, where are we struggling in prime time? I mean,
I didn't think so.
It's just the record. It's just the record. They've fallen into a bad record anytime they don't have a game at 1 o'clock.
This year, I think right now they're.
But I mean, wait a minute. Stop. What are we considering prime time though? Because I guess I'm getting lost because last year we had 2 prime time games?
Yeah. Well, you had Thanksgiving and Sunday night.
Right, and we won them both.
Patriots game. Yeah, the
Patriots game was the Saturday at 4. We were 2-1.
Okay, so 2-1. We played well in all 3 of those games.
Do you call the Texans game primetime game?
No, it's just a playoff game. I mean, it's not. I mean, obviously, it's a big game, but I mean, obviously, the times that they play, it's not considered like it's a primetime game. We in the primetime slot. It's just a slot you fell in. But I mean, I don't get where people are saying that we don't play good in primetime. I mean, if you want to go back to when they did the Thurman Thomas jersey retirement, and we had what's his name, Derek Anderson at quarterback. We shouldn't even been in a primetime game. There's no way in hell this team should have been playing on primetime at that point.
No.
I mean, and I know we can't go back to like the days of Trent Edwards and things of that, but I mean, God, I mean, I don't understand what people say. I thought this team shows up in prime time.
I thought
I think
so
Josh
too.
Allen does.
I think they do. I mean, you think about it right now. After 1:00 games this year, we're 1-1.
Well, it's
Right.
kind of started with those two games that they had at the beginning of the year against the Titans and the Chiefs. I think that's really where that discussion really kind of came about. Was that Tuesday night game that game wasn't even meant to be a primetime game, if I remember right. That was supposed to be a Sunday 1:00 game, right?
Yeah, and that was the third time that game. That was the third time that the NFL's ever had a Tuesday night football game.
Well, they have a fourth time this week too. So that whole situation was a conundrum. And then the Chiefs game, and I think having those two games back to back certainly impacted them. But it's going to be interesting to see how the Bills play against an NFC opponent that of the caliber of the 49ers or what's left of them. They're going to be without Jimmy Garoppolo, I believe. They're going to be without George Kittle, I believe. But they still have guys like Brandon Ayuk. Oh no, Brandon Ayuk is on COVID, but he might be returning next week. But they still have guys like Deebo Samuel that are going to be difficult to defend. It's definitely going to be a fun week of preparation, and really diving into what this team's all about and seeing how the Bills can potentially take advantage of mismatches.
All right, I'm going to respond to this because it says prior to that we played awful. Can see he hasn't followed the team very long. Okay, first of all, let me get something straight with you. I followed this team since 1990 when I was 3 years old. Before I knew about ABCs, my parents had me name different players on different teams with numbers, okay? I followed this team all throughout. I'm not going back in time to pre-McDermott teams to talk about the Bills in prime time. We barely got any primetime game. I'm not going back to a Dallas Cowboys Sunday night game that we blew, or Monday night game we blew against Tony Romo 15 years ago. I'm talking about specifically under Sean McDermott. The Bills have been solid in primetime outside of the Derek Anderson started Monday night game that we should have never been in. And the only reason we were in it was because it was a tribute to Thurman Thomas. We didn't have any type of team to play any type of primetime game.
And Derek wasn't even supposed to be starting.
Right. So, in my opinion, under Sean McDermott, we play well in primetime games.
And in that game with Thurman Thomas, we held Tom Brady to under 200 yards passing, and he didn't score a passing touchdown.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know where the narrative that comes for as far as Sean McDermott teams of why we play bad. I mean, that's just like saying, well, we used to play good in primetime when we had Trent Edwards because we played good in primetime with Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas. It doesn't make any sense.
The reason why we got these primetime games this year, based on what we did last year, and the numbers on the numbers were through the roof for Bill's appearance last year on primetime games. That's why we have these primetime games this year, and the success that we had.
Right. If we would have lost all those games, we would not be on primetime this year. We wouldn't be. But I don't know. I just think that sometimes we compare things to the past. Like, Sean McDermott is Sean McDermott. And honestly, the 2019 Bills are 2019 Bills. The 2020 Bills are 2020 Bills. And next year, the 2021 Bills will be the 2021 Bills. That's why we play every season.
Right.
That's why we have a salary cap.
This is not the 1990 Bills. This is not the 2000 Bills. This is the 2020 Bills.
Right. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Any guys want to touch on anything else before we wrap it up and get up out of here?
All I know is it's going to be a very, very interesting December for the Buffalo Bills. This is going to be our push for the playoffs. This is our drive. This is what it's going to come down to. So whether we have success or we don't have success, the next month is going to determine where this Bills team stands.
Yeah, like Fred said, this is definitely an exciting time to be a Bills fan. It's an exciting time to be a content consumer. It's an exciting time to be a content producer. Be sure to stay tuned to everything we have going on here at the Cold Front Report throughout the week. I'll be going live on Tuesday with the Overtime Podcast with Jeff Uvino, recapping this Chargers game and also previewing the 49ers game. Also stay tuned for it'll be Sunday, the Sunday night tailgate with Mookie Hawkins. Hopefully we'll get Mario Granada back on the show for that edition. But yeah, and Jeremy, you're going live with Zoe on Thursday, I assume. Yep. So he'll be going live 8:30 on Thursday with the Pressure Front Podcast with Lorenzo Alexander, who, I mean, hey, I watch the show every single week, and this guy kills it with his analysis and his insight. So you guys, you definitely don't want to miss that show either.
You know what? Mike Boger just said something in the chat. He said the team needs the fans. We need a virtual tailgate. The team should join online. You know what? That'd be a damn good idea, Mike. That's a good idea. I'm gonna see if we could do some at CFR. Maybe we get some people to come on. Let me see what I can do for that. That's a good idea, Mike. I like that. I like that a lot. See what we can make happen. You know, we have a habit of making things happen, and we're super smart and today I have no income.
And ain't nobody done that. No one's done that yet.
No, let's not get the idea. We know other people steal ideas and concepts. So, but yeah. Other than that, I mean, guys, I mean, we're 8-3. We still control our own destiny. The Tunas are right behind us by one game. Right behind us, one game. Make sure you guys are get over to visit our friends at Discover 716 too, as they continue to support entrepreneurs and young kids, collegiate kids, and a nonprofit and small businesses as us. So we'll catch you guys next Sunday, hopefully after another win. Hopefully we keep this Buckethead Fred thing going. And as always, thank you for joining us. Before you leave, make sure that you're liking and sharing this video if you can. If you're on YouTube, definitely like us and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button and ask your friends to subscribe. We're gonna have some giveaways coming up pretty soon here. So as always, this is your Cold Front Report Bills post-game show powered by Avalon Sports. Hey, 8-3, it sounds good. We'll catch you guys later.